Several years ago, there was a made-for-television movie that was entitled The Day After. And it was filmed in Lawrence, Kansas. And it was to depict what that city would look like after a nuclear attack. And right before the movie was to play, they put on a warning that parents might want to take precautions, that this might be something too graphic and too violent for children to see. But that scene sounds a lot like today's gospel, where Jesus rather graphically talks about the end of the world. And he's talking specifically about the destruction of Jerusalem and the temple in Jerusalem in the year 70 AD. And for the Jewish people, the destruction of the temple was for them like the end of the world. And the church deliberately places these readings here today for us to listen to and apply, because we're coming to the end of another church year. Next Sunday is the Feast of Christ the King, the close of this present liturgical year. And then 2 weeks from now is the first Sunday of Advent, already, the new year in the life of the church. And so the church has us take a look at this question: are we prepared? Am I prepared for when Christ comes again? Am I prepared right now when the Lord would call me home? Am I ready if today is the day that I would meet the Lord face to face? Well, we know from the summary of Jesus' teachings that the great commandment is love. If we love God above all things and we love our neighbor as we love ourselves, we're fulfilling what the Lord has us do. So looking at that great commandment of love today, it's a time to examine our consciences, to be ready for when the Lord calls us, whether it's today or a day to come, to be ready. And I'm asking you to think along with me as I examine my conscience here, looking at thoughts, words, deeds. Are all of our thoughts, words, and deeds loving right now? We look first at our thoughts. Do I judge people quickly? Do I assign motives to people as to why they did or didn't do something? Do I think that I'm a little better than other people, and I sort of look down at the poor dears? Do I think I'm a little smarter, a little more with it than other people that I look down my nose at? My thoughts, are they loving all the time? There was a Peanuts cartoon in which Charlie Brown and Linus were standing there looking at a picture that Linus had just drawn of a man. And Charlie Brown says to Linus, "Well, you know, Linus, you must be very insecure as a person because you drew that man with his hands behind his back. Your body language tells me that." Linus says, "You got it all wrong, Charlie Brown. I drew the man with his hands behind his back because I don't know how to draw hands." But don't we do that with people? Trying to figure out what their reasoning is, and maybe jumping ahead very hastily, very recklessly, in assigning them a motive for what they did or didn't do. Are my thoughts loving about other people? How about my words? Are they loving? When we examine our consciences at the end of each day, how many of my words were encouraging and supportive of other people? And how many of them were just downright critical? When people are around me, do they feel like I took them up a notch? Or do they feel like I just took them down a couple? Do I gossip? Do I like to listen to gossip? Are my words loving all the time? There's a classic story about 3 people that were making a retreat together. And as they really got into this retreat, they decided to bare their souls and mention something that they've been hiding in their life, something that was an embarrassing flaw. And the first person said, well, I have to tell you other two that I've been drinking too much. The next one said, well, I have to tell you two that I've been gambling a lot lately. And the third one said, well, I have to tell you two that I'm an incurable gossip, and I can't wait till this retreat is over, because boy, do I have things to tell other people about you two. But isn't that our human nature? My thoughts, my words, are they loving? And how about my deeds, my actions, are they loving? When we look at that great commandment to love God above all things with our whole being and to love our neighbor as ourselves, part of that is helping somebody else along the way, loving somebody else, and assisting them. Do I do that readily? There's a story in the news about a group of people that climbed a mountain, and they all had disabilities. One of them was an amputee. Another one had epilepsy. 2 of the others were deaf. And 5 of them were blind. They climbed this mountain and came all the way down. And they did it well. And one of them was asked by a reporter, how did you do that? And one of the persons said, we just all helped each other along the way. Every one of us has abilities, things that we can do that maybe somebody else can't do. And we also have things that we can't do, that we depend upon others to assist us with. We put our talents at the service of one another. Are my deeds, are my actions loving and kind? Will we be ready whenever the end of the world comes? Will we be ready whenever the end of our life comes? A good way to do that is to use the gift of today. To use today with God's grace. And look at our thoughts, our words, our deeds. Are they loving? Are they kind? Do they help somebody else along the way? Many of you know the name of Mitch Albom, sports writer, author. And he wrote a book a few years ago that so many of us have read called Tuesdays with Morrie. Morrie had been the professor of Mitch Albom in earlier days. Morrie was now 78 years old, and he was dying of Lou Gehrig's disease. And Mitch visits him every Tuesday. And Morrie conducts his last class, his last seminar, from his deathbed with his student Mitch. And Morrie says, let's begin with this idea. Everybody knows they're going to die, but nobody believes it. If we did, we would do things differently. That is a profound line. Everybody knows they're going to die, but nobody believes it. Because if we did, we would do things differently. Morey goes on to say, there's a better approach than kidding ourselves about it. To know you're going to die and to be prepared for it at any time. That's better. That way you can actually be more involved in your life while you're living it. You'll ask yourselves questions like, am I ready to die right now? Am I doing all I need to do right now? Am I being the person that I want to be right now? That is wise advice. God has given us today, and God has graced us with opportunities today to be loving, to be kind, to be helpful in thought, in word, in deed. And if we use those opportunities well with God's grace, with each day that God gives us, we'll be ready whenever God calls us home. And when God calls us home, the truth is, it will be on a day very much like today.